Okay people, long overdue bike check of my Nukeproof Mega 290 Carbon. First of all, I'd like to say a huge shout out to everybody at Nukeproof for the support over the last couple of years. It's been insane. Really sad to see the brand, along with many other brands, kind of go through whatever they're going through. I don't know the full story, but even though it's been pretty tough times, I guess, I know a lot of people have either messaged me directly or probably have managed to purchase a Mega or a Giga or any of the other Nukeproof range, and perhaps are looking for some advice or some experience on how to set one of these bikes up. So that's what this video is about. Obviously I've spent the last 12 months plus riding and racing this bike, so I've got a pretty good understanding of how to set it up and what works for me. When you are watching a bike check or anything like this, I think it's very important to know the rider's weight and height, stuff like that. So I'm 182 centimeters tall and about 76 kilograms in weight. I ride a medium frame. It's full carbon, obviously. It's a Mega Carbon 290. Reach on the Mega Carbon medium is 455. Wheelbase is 1222.48, I think. And the chainstay is 440. And then the head angle with a 170 fork, which is what I run, is 64 degrees. So that's the kind of numbers out the way. I'll give a quick run through of the spec that I've ridden over the last year. Obviously starting with the frame, again it's a medium Nukeproof Mega Carbon 290, so 29-inch wheels front and rear. Love that. I was on the Giga previously, which was a mullet, and I much prefer the 29er front and rear. Just works, carries speed a little bit better, I think. Doesn't fall into the holes. That's my opinion. I did enjoy the mullet, it was pretty playful, but this is more of a race machine, I'd say. Spec wise, proudly sponsored by Bergtech, so I've had a full Bergtech cockpit. The suspension over the last few years has been RockShox. It's what comes standard on the RS build. Zeb Ultimate 170 on the fork with the Charger 3 damper, and then the Super Deluxe Ultimate Air on the rear. 170 front, and then I've done a 65mm stroke on the rear. That's not what comes standard. I know Nukeproof probably wouldn't cover a warranty or would recommend doing that, but it's what quite a few of the team members rode, and I managed to get that off SRAM sometime last year, so just been running it. I did try and go between the coil and the air, preferred the air, especially with the progressive can on that. It just makes the bike a little bit more progressive. I will get to pressures after I've done a run through of the spec. Wheels, Nukeproof Horizon Pros, 29 front and rear obviously. The chrome looks pimping. Brakes, again, the SRAM Code Ultimate Stealths. 200mm rotors front and rear, the HS2 rotors, they're super. Really stoked to have been partnered with Maxxis last year and again this year, so that's amazing. Currently I run a front and rear shorty. It's just winter and it's the bike I've still been riding all winter for training and stuff like that. So max grip downhill casing. It's heavy, and I've got a cush core in the rear as well, just to protect the rim and stuff from unexpected hits. I'll probably run the same combo throughout this year's racing. Downhill casing front and rear. Probably go Assegai DHR2. It's pretty standard, but it's just tried and tested. Can't fault it at all. Rolls quick. It's a little bit heavy, but the name of the game, you just can't really afford to get punctures like that. Again, really happy to run a Mudhugger. I've been sponsored by them since flipping 2013 or something, and they've always been on board, so keeping the grit out of my eyes and vision clear. Also, they actually just look pretty swagged out. Transmission, the T-Type SRAM stuff, 10 out of 10, honestly. I'm going to run the same kit this year, even not being supported by them. SRAM carbon cranks, 165mm length. I would recommend 165s if you can get your hands on them. Just gives you a little bit more clearance when pedaling over stuff. Keeps your feet slightly closer together. I find that it makes turning a little bit more even left to right. Crank Brothers pedals. I've ran Crank Brothers clip pedals ever since basically my first downhill race in 2010, and it's a bit of a dream come true to be actually supported by them this year for shoes and pedals, so that's insane. I've got a 1-up dropper. It's the 210 height, and I've still got quite a lot of insertion. Like I said, I'm 182 centimeters tall, so I really need the saddle to get up to a decent height considering the medium frame. Other than that, we're pretty good to go. I'm very sorry if I've forgotten anything. And then we'll go on to pressures, etc. So I'm going to dive into my spreadsheet. So we'll go off the last race of the season I recorded settings at. So the fork, 170mm, 1 token, 57 psi, low speed compression's at 7, so about the middle. High speed compression all the way open, rebound 8 from fully open. And then we go on to the shock, so it's a Super Deluxe Ultimate Air with the progressive can. Pressure wise is 160 psi. Low speed compression is 2 clicks from closed, so I believe it's 4 in altogether, so that's in the middle. High speed compression fully open, and the rebound is 11 from close. Tire pressures 23 psi, 24 psi. That was on an Assegai and a DHR2 on the rear. Downhill casing both with a Cushcore in the rear, the Pro one, the bigger downhill one. So that, again, 23 psi, 24 psi. That's pretty standard for the year. When I'm riding at home, maybe not pushing the speed quite as much, I'll go down to like 21, 22. Especially in the valley here, Tweed Valley, there's not that many big square hits or anything like that, so you can get away with slightly lower pressures. Yeah, that was race day settings from Val di Fassa. Finally, there was a bunch of questions that people asked on my Instagram quite a while ago. From the top, I'd like to know if you play with stem length, height and handlebar roll, lever position to get best body position. Yes, I have played with that a lot. Stem length, I just have settled on like that middle range, 42.5mm. I don't like a 50mm, it doesn't work for me. I thought that I would because I'm on a shorter frame with a short reach considering my height. But the longer stem just didn't feel natural. The kind of like the turning was unpredictable, and my weight distribution wasn't quite as good as the 42.5mm. But to answer your question, yes, I have played with it. Bar width as well. I'm actually on a super narrow bar in the grand scheme of things. I think I run, this is a 730 bar, but last year I ran 720mm all year. I quite like just the idea of you go to any trail, and most trails are built with like an average bar in mind, if you think about that. So if you're below the average size, you kind of know that you're never going to get yourself in trouble. You can blast into tree sections and know that like, nah, we're sound here. So that's maybe like my strange thought process behind it, but it seems to have worked so far. Also suspension setup, like sag and compression, rebound setup. Suspension settings we've already gone through, but sag, I run 35% sag on the shock, so pretty soft. And then the fork, I don't really set a sag on the fork, I just make sure it's reasonably balanced, slightly stiffer on the front to the rear. I think that's standard. I probably would say if you're riding hard, you'd maybe expect to bottom out once in a ride. That's a pretty good test, I'd say. Brake setup, where do they bite, reach, and some advice on brakes in general for racing and everyday rides. Basically cockpit, you want to be, well, I hold my bar right at the end of the grip. I've got super narrow bars, so I kind of want to maximize that full width. And you just want to be comfortable. I don't get the craze of like having like real high rise levers, like a crazy flat angle. It just pushes my body weight back, I feel. But also the same as like if you have your right levers really steep, you're going to find that when you brake, your arm and your body weight is getting pushed over the bike instead of bracing into the bar. So just find a kind of like a medium level. I used to have my levers quite flat, and then if you pay attention to Amaury Pirion, he's got his levers really steep. So it just kind of goes to show there's no right or wrong, but in my opinion, when I'm braking, I want to be bracing against the bike and the bars and not feel like my hand's going to slip off the bar. It's probably the worst thing that could happen. Do you think people get too hung up on the small details? Yes, absolutely. Me, myself included. Find a setup that works and just run with it. Obviously, testing and trying different things is good because you will find like somewhere that works best for you. But I find that generally like setup guides on websites and stuff do get you in a pretty good place. I think things that are important to pay attention to are your sag, at least to start with. You don't want to be like 10% sag, and you also don't want to be like 50% sag. So find that middle ground, match your fork to it, and then pay attention to your tire pressures. Anywhere from like 19 to 25, 27 maybe if you're a heavier rider. And if you have a tire pressure gauge, just check your tire pressures every time you ride. It's kind of like good peace of mind. You know you're not going to get flats, and it makes your riding a little bit more predictable. So that would be some advice for me. Why do you choose the Mega over the Giga? Well, good question. Obviously I rode the Giga 2 years ago and podiumed on it at the first EWS I'd ever raced, so it's definitely not a bad bike. I felt like it was, well, it is such a progressive bike, and it was quite difficult to generate speed on some of the flatter EWS or EDR stages that I was racing. And I quite like just to try lots of different bikes. At the time I was coaching full time, and I felt like it was quite good for me to understand how different bikes felt, especially as the Nukeproof Mega is such a popular bike. It was quite useful for me to be able to give a client who was riding this bike some advice and compare it to the other. So I definitely run a much stiffer setup and a much slower rebound setup than my Giga. How I set my Giga up was pretty soft and very, very fast, which was good when you're on familiar terrain, but you go anywhere that you're not familiar with, and I felt like I was getting caught out, bucked and stuff, and it was pretty unpredictable. I think we'll wrap there. Thanks very much for watching. Stay tuned for some cool news about this year. I've got some amazing partners supporting the show this year. 7 Mesh, some of the best kit in the game, super comfortable. Crank Brothers, Maxis, Cushcore, Tweed Valley Bikes, Dirt School, Berg Tech, Mud Hugger and Smith are all on board, and I'm super keen to finally release my plans and stuff. So thanks very much for watching. If you do have any more questions, throw them in the comments. I'll get back to you. Smash the like button, do all that rubbish YouTube stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.